administering a containerized Docker system, there's a good chance that you have multiple Docker host servers. This means you'll have a need to connect to the Docker daemon on a remote machine. By default, the network internal to a host uses a non-networked Unix socket that's limited to the local Docker instance. However, Docker is able to connect to other remote hosts via SSH or TLS. In this video, we're going to look at how you can connect to a remote Docker host. Connection details to a Docker host daemon are referred to as a Docker context. Here's a sample command line command that creates a new Docker context to a remote Docker host via SSH. The command is docker context create. The host is specified using the Docker flag with the format host equals SSH : then the name of the SSH user, and the SSH address. This is followed by a description flag that can be any text describing the context, and then the unique name of the context. In this case, my-remote-engine. Normally, the Docker CLI is communicating with the default context, which is your local Docker instance. To switch context to the one just created, you would use this command, docker context use, and then the name of the context. All commands that you run after this command would be sent to and executed on the remote Docker daemon. Once you're finished executing commands on the remote Docker instance, you can switch back to the default local context with this command, docker context use default. If you want to temporarily switch Docker context without creating a new context, you can simply set the value of the docker_host environment variable to an SSH address within the scope of the current Docker session. In Linux, this is done with an export command as shown. The equivalent command in a Windows command line shell is set. All commands executed after this command will be executed by the remote Docker host. This effect will end when you end your Docker CLI session. Users probably don't want to enter user credentials every time they access a remote Docker host via SSH, which will be the default behavior. So for ease of use, you should consider setting your SSH config file such that SSH connections are reused across Docker CLI sessions. The settings for this are shown. Control master is set to auto. Control path is set to ~/.ssh/control -=%C.